about 20 years ago, my family moved to West Palm Beach, and I have always been a photographer, and I would drive around Lake Okeechobee and just as a kind of a photographic study of the region. And as I became older, I became much more interested in architecture and how we build in these type of environments in the South that are very temporary buildings for workers, and how we improve those buildings. And eventually I stumbled into sugarcane fields on fire and prom day, and created photo projects on each, which eventually we decided was really compelling, much more from a cinematic and documentary film perspective than in photographs. So that's where we eventually started making films there.
So yeah, so we co-direct a lot of our work, and I usually edit almost everything, and so Patrick has this this gift of being a good photographer, and there's projects for us. They're not films right away. Sometimes there's, he's taking photos, or we make an art installation. It just depends on what we decide is going to be a good film or not. And so he had been photographing the town, excuse me, and meeting people, and eventually we decided to make the film. And so the Send Off, which was the first film we made together, we both went down, and we shoot together. Patrick usually does the camera work, but we sometimes have collaborators, and sometimes I do camera B, and I usually do the sound if I can. So we're a very small crew. It's just the two of us most of the time, which makes it easier to kind of be seamless, and also to build relationships that are genuine with the community, and so I'm usually there for the whole shoot. We're both there, and then I go and edit. So with the rabbit hunt, I was editing the Send Off, and Patrick went out and he shot the rabbit hunt, and so he brought that to me, and then I edited it. But we're usually there for the whole thing. And so now with the feature, we moved there and we lived there for the whole, so our feature is about senior year of high school, so we moved there and we stay there for the whole year, which, being married makes it easy to just up and move somewhere. So so that's, and we were working every day together, with the community. So
I feel like I have more friends in Pahokee than anywhere else in the world. Unfortunately, we can't edit the film there because we just don't have the resources, and the internet connection is really bad, and so we're editing the film in Austin, Texas, because there's a lot of support for post-production. But as far as an artistic collaborator in a town, I feel like the stories are so important there, and we're able to tell universal stories, meaning race is a very big part of our work, but the films we're able to make there can be watched and really break down barriers because of the kind of humanist perspective of being a parent, or growing up and going to high school, and so our collaboration with Pahokee is extremely special because we're able to share their stories and kind of expand upon a narrative, a positive narrative, where a lot of times the narrative that exists in Florida or other places about African American youth is really not a positive narrative. So for us, the collaboration is, it's the most important one we've ever had.
And we don't just see documentary as a profession or an art form that we do. We see it as part of a greater way of life, you know, and it's something that brings meaning to our lives and meaning to the people that we interact with as well. And, you know, I guess going back to this, like, we're married, and we are able to establish relationships that are very deep with people, and so that's very important to us. We would never want to just go to a place and make a film and leave, and then come back and shoot a little bit and then leave, because we're trying to, you know, it's about life. It's about creating an experience that is positive in every aspect, not just in what we shoot and what we show, but also in what we can do for the people that we meet, and how we can really establish genuine friendships and be there for them when they need us, the same way that they're there for us when we need them. And so, so I think that's one of the reasons why we stay in Pahokee so much, is that we really have good friends there. So.
When we show the films in Pahokee, you know, if you can imagine watching your wedding video or a birthday video, it's observational film, so it's very real to them. Nobody's talking to the camera, and I guess Facebook Live is really popular in Pahokee. So if people are rabbit hunting, or if people are at prom or at a high school basketball game, there's always somebody live. And so our films are kind of like an edited Facebook Live experience. You know, it's just like with prom, it's just one of the most important days of the year. So watching that film for the kids or for the parents, it's, you know, it's a really special thing. It's like watching a wedding video. It's very intimate, and
I think people in Pahokee are conscious about the way that they've been portrayed. You know, the news crews are there every time there's a shooting, and people have come to town to, you know, make pieces about football because they're very good at it. I think they really appreciate that we go there and we listen and we stay and we collaborate, and we are trying to make a depiction of the town that really reflects what everyday life there is. My favorite screening we made in Pahokee was at the middle school during their, like, the beginning of the day, and it was all the little kids watching the rabbit hunt, and they were laughing so hard, and they loved it so much because that's what they do. Like, they go out and rabbit hunt, and some of them aspire to do that and be like Chris and hunt lots of rabbits. So, and then the two, like, some of the kids that were in the movie were there, and it was just really a really fun screening. So.
The kids who were there were so embarrassed they ran into the bathroom to hide during the screening. The little kids, yeah, it was really special. Well, I always started out wanting to film video. When I was in high school, I just recorded punk shows. That's all I did, and made VHS compilation tapes and did a lot of comedy. So photography came from just being in places where I didn't have access to collaborators. So my mom died when I was in college, and I had to move home and live with my dad in Pennsylvania, and there was nobody to collaborate with, editors or filmmakers. So I just became more of a photographer. And I think that the interaction between the two is really important, because you're not able to go out and shoot a film every day, but you are able to go out and take pictures and think about compositions. And so for me, photography is an exercise that I'm doing constantly when I'm not filmmaking, just to to not lose my ability to think visually and about kind of communicating through imagery. Oh yeah, I mean, I have like 3 cameras I'm shooting all the time. So yeah, I mean, being in the editing room for me is kind of like slow death, because we recorded 300 hours for the features. And Ivete is really the brain of the operation, because you know, she's not only directing the film and producing the film and doing the paperwork, she's having to manage assistant editors, edit the film, and categorize all of the footage. So that aspect of the filmmaking is the hardest part and the least fun. And for someone who's very visual, it's and needs to interact with people, it's like it feels like slow death. And so I'm always trying to sneak out and photograph something. Whether we live in Austin, so there's a lot of you know, college parties. I'll go anywhere I can to find groups of people to photograph.
So that's how he finds a lot of subjects. But on what you were saying about so on this interaction of other art forms with what we do, I think for example, with the editing, I attribute a lot of it to music. I am a very musical person. I grew up, you know, listening to a lot of Brazilian music. I like to dance and going to a lot of shows. And I feel like I have this rhythm. And so when I'm editing, like the first part of editing is not as much, it's more like storytelling. So I would attribute that to reading a lot of books. And when Patrick and I met, I was making fiction work before I moved into documentaries. So I wasn't as concerned with explaining things, but more with people having experiences as they watch a film. And so, so I could say that the influence of literature and music is definitely in the work that we do as well, and especially in the editing part. And so at first I'm trying to tell a story, but as the story comes through, then it's about creating rhythm, and just it's an emotional rhythm that we feel throughout the movie. And so in a way, that's why we don't use music outside of the world, because we are creating rhythm with the elements that we have captured. So definitely when you're editing verite, direct cinema, you know, it's a lot of hours that you have to go through, and it can be hard. It's even hard on the body because you're sitting for so many hours. But I really enjoy it. For me, it's like many things. It's like a puzzle, but it's also like a sculpture. You know, you have all this stuff that you just start putting together and making a form, but then it's a very analytical. So you have to be writing stuff down and understand. Like I am very it's a challenge that I love. So I'm not bored, but I also like to be in the field, and I also like to be with real people. I think without that experience, without the because when I'm in the editing room, I'm texting the girls and the boys in the films all the time. I'm sending them photos of what I'm doing, and I'm asking them how they're doing. Like if I didn't have that element, then I think maybe I would be not as happy in the editing room. So.